Next is Brian Solis. Doesn't need much introduction. He is a social media expert and rock star. He's a principal at Altimeter Group. He's a dear, dear friend, and there are very few people that know as much as he does about social and brands. Brian? Welcome, Brian.
Merci, Loic. Bonjour. First, I would like to say, joyeux anniversaire to Le Web. Happy 10th birthday. Well, yes, you and you. Today, I have to tell you, I am tired. I am tired not just because of the flight from San Francisco, but I am tired because I've been taking a lot of pictures here in Paris, and I don't know where to post them, whether it should be an Instagram or Facebook or Vine or Twitter or Snapchat. And I realize that with every week, there's a new app. There's a new technology. There's a new trend. And I realize that I want to think differently about technology. And that's what I want to talk about today. I've spent the last several years studying disruptive technology, and that's technology that isn't just innovative, it's technology that disrupts markets. And when I think about the theme of Le Web this year, the next 10 years, I realize that the next 10 years are either going to happen to us, right, or it's going to happen because of us. I'm inspired to come to Le Web every year because it's full of people who are trying to change the world. And that's what inspires me to keep going, to keep working. I recently saw a headline that talked about the lack of innovation, the lack of differentiation. Been a lot of discussion in Silicon Valley lately about this egocentric approach to creativity and innovation, meaning that it's someone's idea, they seek funding, and they can apply towards development. But I was talking to David Hornick yesterday, and he mentioned something that I found really interesting for you. He said that Silicon Valley VCs, New York VCs, are paying attention to Europe now. They're listening. And so if they're listening and they're willing to give you money, what are you going to do with this opportunity? I think the next 10 years could be defined by us to create a different future, a different path. Disruption isn't what we set out to do. Disruption is something that happens because of what we do. And to be truly innovative, I think we not only need to be inspired, but we also have to think about a new approach. We have to make it happen rather than watch it happen. I think the future of innovation actually starts with empathy, a human emotion to feel the perspective of someone else, to see the world through their eyes, to feel the way they would feel it, and then the vision to see something differently, and the courage to try it. So what I have studied and what I've prepared for you are some of the best traits and characteristics of innovative companies, smart entrepreneurs. And I put together this presentation, of which I'll upload for you later, as a reference guide. So you could take this research, you could take these examples, and use it in your work or in your development. I saw this probably like you did on Facebook recently. It seemed that everybody was sharing this on the same day. It says, all of this technology is making us antisocial. And you sit on a train today or a bus, and everybody has their screens. Everybody's looking away from one another. And you realize that innovation introduces us to something new. But it's disruption that changes behavior and how something was done into a whole new way. And I think in this race to innovate, we're running, we're trying to raise money, we're reading TechCrunch and Mashable and French Web, and we're reading everything. We're going to all the parties and all of the events. And I wonder if we're getting this ecosystem that's not a bubble, but it might not necessarily be as inspiring to a different 10 years as we could think. And one of the first things that I had learned from smart entrepreneurs and disruptive companies were that they applied either a combination of design thinking or systems thinking in their approach. What was the problem? what kind of opportunity did we want to create? And what could possible solutions look like to bring that to life? Vision is the one thing that can be truly inspired by empathy. And vision is the one thing that we can follow behind. The people who believe in you need to understand what that vision is, because that vision is powerful. It has the ability to disrupt markets. And times couldn't be more challenging. I mean, if you think about how all of us live with our face in our screens every day, we're becoming more connected. This is what I call Generation C, the connected generation. And for all of those who have seen the pictures with the new Pope was inducted, you had the last Pope, and here's everybody standing and listening to him. And then you had the new Pope, and it was shared through the screens of everyone there. And you realize that you had this connected person who was connected to an audience of audiences. And this is the world in which we now have to try to innovate. And this is the world where we have to try to change behavior. This is the world where we have to either feed complacency or we try to change behavior to be more productive. 6 minutes is the longest a teenager can focus on homework before they have to get on their device or a social network or an app. Attention is a precious commodity. And you are trying to inspire a new generation of users, a new generation of consumers or connectors. And it takes your vision in order to change their behavior. Because right now, like I said, I'm tired. I mean, just think about how you read news now. Can you read full articles the way you used to? Or do you find yourself tweeting and sharing pictures of cats? Or seeing animated GIFs or short videos? Because the way that we're consuming, the way that we're lured in to read something is because the headline is different, because they know the science behind it. This woman took a selfie in front of someone who was attempting to commit suicide on the Brooklyn Bridge. This is your customer. This is your user. But this is the person that we have to inspire. This is the person that should change your vision. So how do you build empathy? How do you invoke empathy among somebody that doesn't seem to have it? That seems to live in their own ecosystem, where they're at the center of their own universe. Well, at the same time, if we're not careful, some of the innovation that we're focusing on might just feed the ecosystem rather than change the behavior. This is a brilliant drawing a friend of mine, Hugh MacLeod, had drawn. Says that if an ordinary person can understand what you do, you're already halfway to becoming a commodity. And that's the point. Disruption is about something that's new, something that's different. Everybody has ideas. By the time I wake up and check email, I have heard every buzzword from every startup that's trying to pitch me on their company. But I find it rare to get that idea that I think is going to have an impact, an idea that was inspired by empathy. Empathy is a scarcity. Innovation, I believe, starts by a higher purpose, right? If you're going to apply energy into developing something, imagine what you can do if you applied it with incredible focus or inspiration. Because an old term, 100 years old almost, creative destruction, is about the reinvention of markets over and over and over again, because a new idea is born. A new idea changes behavior to the point where the existing leader in that market is losing market share because of this idea. Creative destruction is synonymous with disruptive technology. I think about Travis and Uber, as he told you the story yesterday about in 2008, the idea was born because it had snowed and he wished he could order a car. It wasn't just about trying to disrupt the market. It was actually a great idea that solved the problem, and then they applied design thinking into developing that app. The result is that Uber is disrupting markets. I mean, all over the United States, governments are actually trying to have it shut down. The same is true for Airbnb. So you know you are onto a good idea when the government tries to shut you down. Good ideas and bad ideas sound ridiculous at the beginning, and that's a good thing. And they sound especially ridiculous with people who don't have empathy for what you're trying to do. There's a lot of firsts to market, and we believe there's a lot of debate whether or not that's the best strategy. There's also a lot of what we call the second mouse, because the first mouse doesn't get the cheese, right? The second one does. And I think that there's lessons to learn from both. Let me give you my most innovative technology example: bread. How many of us say that that's the greatest invention since sliced bread? Did you know that that's a real saying for a reason? Because bread, once it became sliced, became a platform. It was bigger than just feeding you bread. It was now a platform that created markets for sliced meats, for spreads, for accompaniments that would now become your lunch or your dinner. It created an entire marketplace simply because of slicing bread. It solved a problem. It created an entire market. And I believe this type of design thinking, this system thinking of creating markets around your idea is lucrative, and history shows it works. This will probably be better for you when you download it, but what you see are a series of technology firsts and how much they lost on shareholder return. And then you saw that somebody applied empathy and thinking around the product and around the ecosystem and tried it again. And in almost every single one of those second tries, the second mouse earned 100, 200, 300% returns for shareholders. There's something to learn from the failure of others. There are benefits to being a second mover, but you have to actually believe you have something to learn. And that's the point. If you look at some of the best innovators, they have done their homework. They didn't believe that their idea was the only idea that could ever have existed around this opportunity. Does anyone in the audience have the new Samsung smartwatch? Exactly. How many of you will have the Apple iWatch when it comes out? Exactly. Because of the approach that Apple takes to the market is design thinking. It's bigger. It's experience design. It's experience architecture. And that's why a lot of us as entrepreneurs, trust me, I've helped launch over 1,000 startups in my life. There's a common set of traps that innovators get caught in. They either need to rush it to market. They over-design it because they need to get perfection. Maybe it's just a function focus. Maybe they have unrealistic expectations. Maybe it's just a novelty and it'll wear out fast. Maybe it's just a copycat, a me too. Or maybe that they have a big ego and won't listen to anything and everything around them. These are the common traps that equate to failure, plain and simple. Clay Christensen wrote a very inspiring book to me, The Innovator's Dilemma, and it introduced frameworks that allowed you to essentially build creative destruction into your business model, that you were constantly trying to put yourself out of business. And every time you did, you built a new market for yourself. But when I think about the next 10 years of what you can build, look, some of you are going to invest in those big ideas. Some of you are going to create those ideas. But every single one of us will be disrupted by your great ideas. And so when I think about what can inspire you to build a greater future for the next 10 years, it's a play on words from that cover. It's not the innovator's dilemma, it's the dilemma's innovator. What's the problem? What's the opportunity? I want to order a car on my smartphone and pay for it in one click. Disrupt a market because you solved a real problem and you created a great solution around it. So it's part problem solving, it's part design thinking, which is sort of a buzzword, but there's a process to it. And if you think about some of the best companies out there right now, some of the highest valuations of companies, they've all applied this model. Square completely bypassed financial institutions when they launched. It was a first of its kind. They solved a real problem. It was inspired by a glassblower's inability to take credit card payments for his glasswork, a friend of Jack Dorsey's. And Jack helped build that idea. Instagram changed the way you take pictures, right? For the longest time, there was no Kodak moment. It was an Instagram moment. Then it was a Snapchat moment, but then it's gone. Twitter changed the way that you consume media. It didn't just give you a place to tweet, it changed how you found out information. It's an information network where news no longer breaks, it tweets. I watched a TED Talk many years ago when I had first published my book, Engage. Simon Sinek had come out at the same time with a book called Start With Why. And to me, it was one of the most inspiring TED Talks, and there's a lot of them, because it really hit home to me. I realized that in a lot of things that I was seeing, a lot of things that I was researching, there was an element that was missing, and it was this process. Everybody says what they do. Everybody says how they do it. But he had found in his research that very few had said why they do what they do, and compelled and generated empathy around that why. And he used this great example. Everybody uses Apple as an example. But he said, we know that Apple makes really great computers. That's the what. And the how is that they're beautifully designed, simple to use, and have a great user experience. Do you want to buy it? Well, it sounds like every other computer. But when he starts with why, he reverses the process. He says, Apple believes that they can challenge convention, that they can shake the status quo, and that they can do that by thinking differently. They will apply that philosophy to building computers that are beautifully designed, easy to use, with a great user experience, and they are great computers that you would want to buy. And when you start with why with your idea, that means that you're already empathetic in your approach. And it's not just about having that idea that's going to be the next big thing for early adopters. It could be the next big thing that drives an entire bell curve. And you have to think about, what are you aiming to do with your business, and how is it going to appeal to someone at every phase of that bell curve? From the innovators to the early adopters to the early market majority and so on, because you want to keep innovating and playing on the left side of that bell curve. So just because you have the first great idea and you start to build it, you now need to create an entire ecosystem around it. So the four properties of this are empathy, right? You feel the pain or the opportunity about something. You understand the context of which the challenges and the opportunities lie. You come up with a series of creative approaches to solve it, and then you apply logic and rationality so that you can test it and execute it. And there are three pillars that you can base all of this on. Some of the best characteristics are built upon vision, knowledge, and resources. And all of these things are the traits that successful companies and successful entrepreneurs, all shapes and sizes, share. It's not a product, it's an experience. It's not a product, it's a platform. It's not a product, it's something that evokes loyalty. It's not rigid, it's resilient. Google published a wonderful paper, if you haven't seen it, on the 8 pillars of innovation that drives Google to this day. And again, everybody shares the start with why. Have a mission that matters. Google's was organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. They could have stopped with just accessible, but they added the word useful intentionally. Think big, but start small. The whole Google Books initiative started in Larry's office, where he bought a scanner and started scanning book pages and timed it with a metronome to see how long it would take, to see if it would be feasible to make it a worldwide project of digitizing all the books. It did. AdSense, which is their big moneymaker, started as a small idea when a developer put it in Gmail. Strive for continual innovation, not instant perfection. This is one of the biggest traps with an innovator, is that it's never perfect enough. But as Google shows, is that with search and AdWords, those products are continually being innovated on so that it can be competitive for an evolving marketplace. Look for ideas everywhere. I'm always open to inspiration. I'm a hopeless optimist. But one of the biggest opportunities that Google has is what they have a great food program, if you've ever heard about it, but they have these little things called micro kitchens. So in between lunch and breakfast, they have these little kitchens with snacks and whatever it is that you want. And some of the best ideas, like the Google Art Project, are born in those micro kitchens. They want you to share everything. Some of the brands that are in this room have to operate in isolation. They operate in silos. They don't share. There's no transparency. It's command and control. Information goes from the top down. But some of the best ideas will share these things. Spark with imagination, fuel with data. Research proves your idea. Be a platform. Let people build on you. You build on other people's platforms. Make it an ecosystem. And of course, Google's famous for saying, never fail to fail. For example, who remembers Google Video? Nobody, because you use YouTube now. Google Answers, you don't use it, because they killed it after 4 years. But this individual from Google had said that people will remember your hits, not your misses. But just like pillars to be successful innovation, there are common traits that help you fail. And these are opportunities to learn from the mistakes of others. Where if you feel you can't lose, if you feel you have to go at this alone, if you try to create a market all by yourself, if you have a weak support group around you, bad sales, bad biz dev, bad development, if you think that failure is not an option, if you have bad habits or norms, I see that all the time, or if you have narrow or stuck thinking because you're too myopic, because you can't see the opportunity beyond your idea and you're not listening to others. I think that start with why, I think starting with empathy and context is more powerful than we believe, and we just have to let it in. Because in this post-jobs era of innovation, where people are not sure what the future of Apple is going to look like in the absence of someone who understood design and systems thinking, what you are becoming is almost this idea of an innovation architect or an experience architect. A platform, a solution, a dilemmas innovator. This is an example like bread, but it just shows you how when you take a different approach, you can actually see the bigger opportunity beyond just the product that you set out to create in the first place. This is New York, the first city lit up by electricity by Thomas Edison. That was the goal. But to get there, he needed a power plant. So he had to invent that. And it all started with the idea of the light bulb, of which he failed thousands of times in trying to create. And what you see in this progression is how an idea builds a system and an ecosystem and disrupts the world in the process. The most innovative company this year, voted by Fast Company, Nike. Didn't they used to just make shoes? No. They're a technology company now. They're a data company, they're a services company, and they're a platform company. Shoes are built on their platform. They even have a new process of manufacturing these fibers called Flyknit, and Flyknit is a platform now. It's completely disrupted their supply chain. Nike is a platform company. And with the last minute I have, and I'll share this with you, Tesla doesn't just make electric cars. They're the second mouse that figured out, like Edison, that you needed an entire ecosystem to support the success of a new type of car. A car that people didn't believe was going to make the market or have the impact that it did. A car that even a friend of Elon's at Fisker tried to disrupt. Fisker focused on the design of a beautiful car. Elon focused on the design of a complete platform. It wasn't just in how the car looked or how it drove, it's how they built the car. They invented, like Edison invented the power plant, they invented ways to work, right? They used motion gesture devices and hacked them so that they can use it in their 3D modeling, all with their hands. It's a great YouTube video if you haven't seen it. Then they didn't want to sell through dealerships because no one likes buying a car through a dealership. They wanted to have a great experience. So they built a new model to sell cars online and through boutiques, like Apple. And now the government is challenging them in the United States because they have franchise lobbyists who tell the government and who give the government a lot of money that every car manufacturer has to sell through dealers. And Elon says, no, we don't. Because look at that. Wouldn't you rather buy a car in that environment? The answer is yes. And they're convincing lawmakers one at a time by cleverly parking Teslas in front of their Capitol buildings and giving them free test drives to let them experience the product rather than just going against convention because that's what they're supposed to do. But like Edison in the power plant, they're building out a whole electrical infrastructure around key points in the United States so that people can feel safe about having a full battery, making them feel great about owning the car, and as a result, it's the best car that has come out in a long time. Because he thought differently, he solved the problem, and I'll leave you with one final thought because I'll give you this deck for free. There are only two ways to influence human behavior. You can either manipulate it or you can inspire it. The future is a blank slate. It's yours to define, but everything begins here. Thank you.